Well, I think I met Brian sometime in around 2010, 11. He had been a guy that I found to have quite a few good collectibles in the MMA Collector world. Um, one of the first items I believe that I bought from Brian would have been some early UFC SEG era posters. It might have been. It later moved on into like Tank Abbott's Ultimate 95 shoes, the yellow Tiger Asics that he wore in his three fights. Um, then the Scott Ferrozzo cape that he wore, and I believe UFC 8, I believe it was. And, just spiraled from there. I always had a good experience with Brian, and every deal that we made, he always delivered. And I always enjoyed doing business with him. Later, he went on to do some other pretty extraordinary things as well that we'll get into a little bit later on here. But first of all, thank you, Brian, for taking the time out and coming on here. And first question I would have is, have you always been a collector, or did you start out as a kid collecting sports memorabilia, or did it all start with the MMA stuff?
No, I did start out as a kid as well, with Star Wars figures or little things like that, Hot Wheels. And then as I got older, I just got into the UFC or MMA memorabilia. And, I just thought the chase is what got me into it, because back when we first started doing it, it was like it was a little bit harder to get, So I was just fortunate enough to meet a lot of those fighters throughout the years at different events, when they only happen like once every 3 or 4 or 5 months or whatever. And we just went from there with it and met guys like you, and it just turned into a journey, man. And it still is. And I've got a lot of good friends over it as well. So.
I'm sorry, Ed. I was just going to mention, it's funny that Ed mentioned both Tank and Scott, Tank Abbott and Scott Ferrozzo in his intro for you, because, among collectors, everybody's trying to do, buy a unique item, a one-of-a-kind piece. And you went ahead and created a moment like that for yourself. And that's part of what this conversation is about. So where were you circa UFC 8 and 9 when Tank Abbott and Ferrozzo were coming up and fighting? Where'd you see those? And take us back there and take us with you.
I grew up in kind of like a little rough neighborhood where that was just what everybody that I know just loved to do. And so we used to watch them from the very beginning, actually. And as everyone voice was just demolishing everybody, nobody could believe it. But Tank was always my favorite, because he was always like you said, a street fighter, barroom fighter. And Tank really is. When Tank tells you he's a street fighter, Tank is a 100% street fighter, man. And then that's how I just got connected with that. And when I finally was in a situation and I figured that's something that I was wanted to do when we did it in the backyard, that's who I reached out to first, was those two guys.
How would you get a hold of a guy like Tank back in them days? I mean, could you just find his
number?
I'd
say hardest, man. He was probably the hardest to get a hold of. Scott, I got a hold of Scott relatively easier. And Tank, I was just searching and finally came up with one guy who claimed to have been, that he knew Tank. So I reached out to him, and he talked to Tank, and Tank had wanted me to call him, so I called him, and there we went, man. So, but Tank was
what I find. What's amazing to me is, on pay-per-view TV and the Octagon, the UFC, to come into a backyard and fight each other in Ohio. I mean, how much you got to pay these guys to do that,
as far as how much they got paid, I'll just leave that up to them. I'm sure you'll talk to them one day and see how that goes. But to be honest, I didn't think it was going to happen, but I just felt like that them two had a history with each other. They didn't necessarily like each other, and they were both street fighters, And Scott, Scott is a street fighter as well, And I had a pleasure of going up and staying up at Scott's house for about a week one time, and he's wild. he's wild, man. But so anyway, so I reached out to him, and we did it. We discussed doing it. Scott said he was in. Tank said he was in. I told Scott that I would send him over a contract, and I did. And I told Tank that I would send him over one, and Tank said, "No contract needed, man." He said, "If I give you my word about something, I'm gonna do it." And I was like, "Oh man, I had never met him before or anything." I'm like, "Oh man, I don't know about this." So, you're gonna have hotel rooms involved, plane tickets involved, and if they don't show up, then you're still out of that money, But I took him at his word, man, and I'll tell you, I sat there and waited at that airport for him, and he got out of that plane, and I about fell over, But yeah, they're both pretty good men of the word, honestly. Yeah.
Now, when you had them come to Ohio, did they get there a day before that they were at your house together?
They got there the day before, and they stayed at separate hotels, and we had I got about a 2 or 3 hour. I think it may be that long, but it was a long time ago. But we have a pretty extensive interview that we did with Tank and Scott the night before that. We made up in a hotel lobby, and they talked a little bit of banter back and forth, but they were leaving it for the next day, and we did a big old interview with them. I never aired it to this day. I'm pretty sure I still got the USB stick back there in the back somewhere, man. But maybe one day I'll send it to you and let you check it out.
Yeah, well, that might be something for you to maybe get a little of your money back. You might be able to do something with that.
Maybe so. It was pretty interesting interview, man, because Scott talked about how he actually got into the USC and with Bruce Buffer involved and all that stuff. And Tank talked about how he got into it and everything else. And Tank was actually supposed to fight at USC 5, and it didn't come through. But that's when he was actually scheduled to get into the first one, and then he got in there in USC 6 and did his thing, So, hey, man, I remember Tank told me a good old interview about that USC 6 fight, about how nobody wanted to fight John Matua, and when they were in the room getting the names drawn, the fighter, however it went, that when they said Tank was fighting Matua, Tank jumped up and started screaming, "Yeah, yeah!" He just said that they all thought he was nuts, and and Tank got into it was that guy Pat from the early USCs. Tank got a fight with him on the elevator. No, past Smith.
Oh yeah.
So all that's on that stick. Yeah, they talk about all that good old stuff. So, yeah, we had fun. So it was the night before. Then the next day, we met up, and nobody knew where we was going. Including none of my friends or family. And we just we went over there and they got it on.
Let me ask you. Let's take it back a little bit here, because when you sent the contract to Scott, you had the verbal agreement with the other guy, but you were taking this seriously, and I know you didn't intend it to be in the backyard at the very beginning. Why don't you take us through how this fell apart for you?
As far as how the fight fell apart, it's about where we were supposed to fight at.
Yeah, all that.
Yeah, we were going to go to one of my buddies owns some nightclubs around town, and he had one that was shut down, and it was a pretty big wide open area. So we were originally going to do it in the club, and he called me. I think it was the day before it was, and said that the sheriffs had contacted him saying it was going to be an unsanctioned event or whatever, and it was just an expedition anyway. So it was just for fun, but he told me, if you still want to do it, have at it. But if they come, then they might shut you down. So we just decided to take it to the backyard, which was just as fitting.
Yeah, I remember you had a little fire going out there. It looked like you had some friends and family.
Man, Tank's dad was in the videos, and some of Scott's buddies, a few of my friends, and yeah, so it was pretty interesting, and they were pretty good sports about it. We should have probably, one thing I do wish we would have done is stood them up a little bit more, but we were going on the USC 11 stuff. They used to let them stalemate like that back then, so we kind of did as well. And at this point in time, it probably was a good thing that we just let them recover a little bit while they were just wrestling. But it was a pretty good fight, man. It's some hard hits, as you see. My buddy Scott got Tank dropped in the fight, and and Tank got a good shot, and that was about it, man. And that night, matter of fact, when we get back from the fight, Tank, I dropped Tank and everything off, and I go to my house to get ready because we're gonna go out to the clubs and go party that night. And I'll come back to the hotel to get Tank, and he has those the backyard fight gloves, and he signed them for me and gave them to me, and he told me he wanted me to have them, and we went out and partied all night, man.
So what happened to Scott then? Did he go home and he didn't come out with
Scott
you guys?
Yeah, Scott don't drink or anything like that. Although they did have a bet, Tank said if I win, you're gonna go out and have some beers with me. And Tank said Scott said if I win, whatever it may have been. But yeah, because Scott's not a drinker, he don't drink at all. And but Scott was just, at the end of that, Scott he was ready to go to bed probably, So next day I think Scott home. Yeah, him and his wife. His wife came down.
What kind of reception do you get when you get out to the clubs and you got Tank Abbott with you? Did everybody recognize him? What happens with that?
Yeah, most everybody that didn't recognize him as soon as there was a ton of people around him, and everybody, of course, wants to come up and get pictures and and stuff like that. So we went to the strip club too, but that was one of the spots we went to. But man, Tank is just one of the he's one of the toughest men you'll ever meet, but he's one of the best men you'll ever meet. And that's, in my opinion, that's just the guy's honest truth. And I'll give you an example why. The USC 6 gloves that I got from Tank, those were always debatable about the first gloves or whatnot, but I offered him a whole bunch of money for them. And he said it wasn't enough. So I was like, okay. So I offered him like 50% more, and we're talking about a lot of money, man, like them shoes times 10, so it was just a lot of money. And so anyway, his dad was in the back seat, and his dad said, David, don't get rid of the gloves as part of your history. And so as soon as his dad said that, I was like, okay, I'm not asking for, it is what it is. So Tank, after the fight and all that stuff, Tank started coming down here visiting me about 3 times a year. He'd come and stay, and I put him up where he put himself up at the whole house. He rode his motorcycle from Huntington Beach down here to Ohio. I'm like, man, you are wild. Wow. Yeah, and just to hang out for a few days, and he stays for a few days and turns around and goes back home. And so anyway, he told me to, before he leaves, to give him my address. He wanted to send me something. And I was like, no, I don't need anything, man. I don't need anything. He was like, no, I want to give you something. So I was like, okay. So when he went home, I didn't send my address to him because I didn't want him to feel obligated or anything for whatever it was he was wanting to do for me. Then he called me and he's like, hey, Brian, man, he said, you never sent me your address. I said, okay. So I texted him over my address, and about a week later in the mail, here comes these USC 6 gloves free, man. I was like, Lord have mercy. But, he just, he turned down a lot of money and he gave them to me for free. So that just,
that's amazing.
Speaks to Tank's character, man. Man, you may have never, Tank likes to paint. I don't know if you ever knew that, but he likes to paint, man. And he painted a picture of him and I, like when I took him back to the airport after the backyard fight. We took a picture before we went into the airport, and I sent it to him, and he ends up painting a big old, 20 by 7 picture of me and him. So it's pretty cool. I got it hanging up in the bedroom.
He's a pretty talented guy. I read his book that he wrote, and I mean, it's amazing. The guy, not only is he tough as hell, but he's pretty damn smart too.
He's extremely smart.
A degree, And Brian, did you ever read Tank's book by chance?
I did. I actually have 1 or 2 of them right here in my little book cabinet. Yeah.
He's come out.
Love him out. I think his second one came out not long ago, and I think he's supposed to have a third. And he told me that I think in the third book he was going to address the backyard fight. Now I haven't talked to him about that in a long time, but at that point in time, that's what he had said. So, maybe he might go a different route. But Tank moved out of Huntington Beach and he moved to Arizona. And
yeah, I saw that.
He's living the dream, man. He don't drink no more or anything, So he's just got a beautiful house, a beautiful wife, and he's just enjoying life, man. He said he's gonna come down this summer, but we'll see.
Yeah, I notice I see him on some podcasts every now and then, like Dan Severn and Don Fry go out and visit him, and and at one time, I don't think he really cared for either one of those. I remember some of the comments. I always laugh
so much to this day, but you're right. Yeah, Tank. Those guys are alpha males. Them guys like they do it back when they was doing it. That's that was pretty brutal. So guys like Tank and Shamrock obviously and Severn and all them. Those guys are, they're the real deal. So they're alpha males and they butt heads. So.
Yeah. So Brian, when did you first meet Mark then? Coleman and West. Now, do you live fairly close in Ohio to them?
Well, yeah. I might have met him at a fight. I can't remember, but we ended up hanging out a whole bunch of times, me and Mark and Wes. And I still talk to Wes to this day, actually. And we took car trips, to different, small venue fights with that Frank Dukes, I believe his name was, and Bloodsport was there. Mark's got some stories to tell. You got to get him on one of your podcasts one time. He's a pretty good talker, and he'll sit there and tell you some good old stories, And we did a round trip one time with him. I think it was about 6 hours, and man, I could have probably wrote a book, So, but Mark's a pretty good guy, and he's a big guy. I tell you, man, I don't know if you ever met Mark before.
I've met him. I did a little a teaser for a show with him one time in Ohio. We went out there, and Mark has been on the Lights Out podcast with Miguel a couple of times,
Right. Yeah, man. Mark got them big old monster beast hands, and my kids love him. But Wes is a pretty cool cat. I actually was going to get Wes was going to get in the backyard as well, and we was talking about him and Sean McCorkle. I don't know if you remember who he is, but because McCorkle's pretty close by. He's only an hour or so away, so we were going to get them in there and before everything fell apart as well. But we had big things going to come. Fry was going to fight. There was a bunch of guys going to fight. Yeah, I would have died if Coleman wouldn't have fought. So
yeah.
Once the alpha, always the alpha. And I'm sure Coleman would have fought. Tank obviously was going to fight. We tried to get Kimbo to fight, and they went from $5,000 to wanting a fortune, and that was even before he really became famous, So they, that's right when he became famous. But I talked to that Icy Mike guy, and they wanted way too much. They didn't want to do it. So that would have been a nice little backyard fight with one of them guys.
Yeah. What exactly happened that the guy stole that? Like, how did he obtain that footage prior to you being able to cash in on that?
I had a friend that's a pretty good computer guy, and I had him make me the app. And that's he made apps where he worked at, but I reckon I don't know if it's true or not, but the guy in England told me that he was able to hack it because the guy didn't lock it or something like that, So anyway, so the guy was his computer hacker up there in England, and he hacked in there and he put it on everywhere, as you've seen, and then I went and I got an attorney, and I tried to get the attorney to they did. They made YouTube take it off multiple times, but every time it would get off, it popped right back up. So it was a done deal. And you can't even sue them over there because they got different, the international laws and things like that. Lawyers said you can't, might as well just forget about it. So yeah, it went from and the only thing he did was messed it up for everybody. Little does he know, it's like, come on, man. But $10 price tag, and I'm like, man, you don't even know how much.
$10.
I was only going to charge $1, to be honest, and I was only going to charge $1, and I think it was Tank or Scott won, and it was like, no, $10, and I was like, okay, so I did $10, and the guy said that's the reason why I hacked it, because of the obscene amount of money, So.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
it's unfortunate that happened, because I think that would have been something pretty special for you, and then you might have been able to do it again. We could have got some.
Oh, we were doing it
more
again.
action.
Like that picture I sent you with me and Don Fry. That was me and Don Fry talking about fighting, and Don was down to fight, and I ended up talking to I bought a bunch of collectibles off of Don, and he was down, so. Big West was down. West was going to fight. Obviously, Scott was going to fight. Tank was going to fight. It would have been fun, but
so was it going to be Scott and Tank again, or was it going to be Don and
no?
Tank?
We were a tournament next.
Oh, a tournament! Oh,
yeah,
Christ.
that was next. We were going to do a tournament. We had a everybody obviously would have been famous guys, you know. So it was a bummer that it happened, but you know, somebody's always got to ruin everything, man.
You still had an absolutely unique experience, like a memory
Yeah,
that
man.
nobody's gonna be able to take away. Obviously bittersweet because you're actually. How long has it been now?
Oh Lord, man, what was it? Ed, shucks, I couldn't even tell you.
Was it
12
maybe
years.
2012, maybe?
Yeah, somewhere right around there. It's been so long, I couldn't even tell you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
11,
it's been
12
a
years. It
while.
takes a
But I
little bit
say
of this takes a little bit of the sting of the money away from it. But like you said, I mean, yeah, they stepped on some ideas there that would have been, historic.
it sure would have been, and that's the most sad part about it. You know, as far as I'm concerned, you know, I was able to meet a couple good guys over it, so you know, I'm not crying over the spilt milk from my point of view, but yeah, it ruined it for everybody. You know, we're just gonna have some good stuff going on, all for fun, but maybe in the future somebody will do it again. I mean, it's out there for the taking. They'll do it if you know some backers, so
Yep.
we can get them to do
Yeah.
it. But
Now, did you get that idea from Kimbo's fights, his
uh,
Miami backyard fights, or?
you know, I was thinking about that earlier, and I was like, I don't know if I really did it. Maybe, you know, you just had to see which one came out first, you know. But I would say, you know, it was right about the same time. And I'd always wanted to do that for years and years and years. But, you know, before really the internet started going on, it was you couldn't contact people like that.
Yeah, I don't really think that at that time those Kimbo fights were very popular amongst
No, they
everybody.
weren't.
So,
Yeah, they weren't
you
real
know,
popular. They were just then taking off. I don't even know if he was fought Gannon. Well, I think Gannon might have been one of his first few, anyways. But yeah, it'd been nice to get Gannon in the fight. Him and Kimbo again.
yeah,
That was a heck of a fight, man. I enjoyed that one. Gannon about lost his job over that.
Yeah.
Now, do you still watch the UFC? Do you ever attend events when they come to
I
Ohio? Or
years, man, but I used to go every single time, and I would actually fly out to Vegas by myself, and I'd go to every single fight. They used to have them here in Columbus every year, and I haven't been in a while, for sure not, man. But I still watch it and follow it, and every single day I probably spend an hour on the fight sites and things like that, just like I'm sure you know you do too. But so I stay up on it, yeah.
yeah, yeah, I went out to Columbus about the last one that they had there, maybe about a year and a half ago.
Yeah, they used to have them out there with the Arnold Classic every year, because that's where the Arnold Classic every year is at, is up there at Nationwide Arena, and they used to do it every single year, and they took a break, and I'm sure they'll come back. But you know, they got so many around the world they got to go to now. It might take a few years to get back to you, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I was
unfortunately.
hoping you'd get back into collecting. I need another source here to do some trading and some buying here.
Man, I tell you what, man, you know, I spent so much time doing that. You know, that stuff, you know, just the research, the track it down, and them guys don't you got to be a car salesman. Well, I don't know about nowadays, but you know, back then you had to be a car salesman to talk them out of it. Like they would not want to come off for nothing, man. And I know me and Fry, man, I about had one of his belts, and he he told me to find him an old I forget what year it was, a '69 Cadillac or something like that. And he traded me, but he had a specific Cadillac that he wanted to pull his horse trailer around with, you know. And
Okay.
he's like, my wife's mad. I heard his wife in the background. No, don't you dare! And you know, look, yeah. So
Yeah, it's tough, man. Get him to give up the belt.
I had a USC belt, man. I don't know. If I want to say who it came from, but I most definitely had a pre UFC 12 belt. Is a 12 and under, and yeah, I had one. I was fortunate enough to have it, and had it for about a day, and yeah, and somebody wanted it. So,
Do you
but I'm
regret not having some of that stuff today? What are your
yeah,
what's
man.
your feel
I
on that?
do regret not having some of it, man. For sure. You know, obviously, I would have loved to. I'd love to have that Pride Grand Prix trophy still. That was a nice one to have. You know, but I honestly wanted to, like a few of the guys wanted to try to, eventually do like a museum, like Jeremy from out in California. He always talked about it as well. But that's what I wanted to do at one point in time, was go in with one or two guys that's got a bunch of stuff and open up a museum out there in Vegas. And that was my ultimate goal for it. And then, so I just dug and you see all the stuff I had, man, and I had a little bit of everything, Fedor's jumpsuit and UFC belts and every glove you can think of, probably 20 pride trophies, so it just, had about everything. But I'd rather, I was losing a little bit of, starting to get out of it because everybody started getting into it, then when you'd post stuff or on our sites about it and things, you would have the trolls that would be negative, and that stuff was just like, I was just like that at that point in time. I was like, it's just starting to be too much drama with all these, all this stuff. So I just slowly just backed out of it, and you guys, which is fittingly, deserved it because you guys are, deserve to be somewhere where the person got passionate. So.
Yeah. Well, one thing I was going to ask you is, I do remember when you had that red Fedor sweatsuit. I ended up getting that. I have that today in my collection, but I was wondering, where did you get that? Did you get that from MMA Collector, or did you? Were you the original?
No, I think I got it from Brett. I think it was MMA Collector.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure that's where it came from. And I missed that one, man. I used to have it on a mannequin down in my
I remember because you sent me a picture that I found, and you had it all kind of set up.
Yeah, and he had a
mannequin.
He had a shirt from that one as well, and I can't remember. It's out there though. The shirt that went with that outfit, it is out there. You can ask MMA Collector, and they'll tell you who they sold it to. But like, if you ever wanted to get the shirt with it, it is out there.
It's getting pretty difficult to find those old collectibles now. It's like people put them in their private collection and they just kind of keep them. It's just not as easy to find that stuff anymore.
That's what I was going after, was that old stuff, the Seg era stuff. And a lot of the guys that's got it these days, got money, so they're not going to part with it, So, I mean, there's still some, you can still gather it up if you really want to, but, you might have to pay, but I would love to see everybody get their stuff together and open them up in a museum one day.
That's kind of what we're hoping. My only regret, the only thing that I recall ever selling that I don't have to this day, are the UFC 10 Coleman gloves that I got from you. I have the UFC 11 gloves, but I sold the UFC 10 gloves when I needed some money at one time, maybe around 2015. And I've often tried to get them back. I would have paid double of what I sold them for at this point, but the guy won't sell them to me. So I don't know. It seems like he just wants to keep them.
And they got the guy out of Japan buying up a lot of stuff too. He pays big money, man.
Yeah, he does.
I sold him some Seg posters for $5,000 before. He pays. He's got a lot of money. Them shoes, those Tank Abbott shoes that I. And I drove like a 7 or 8 hour round trip to get those. He lives up in Michigan and outside of Ann Arbor, I think it was. And that's how I got those shoes, was from him. And when Tank came down, he seen them. He was like, "Gosh, man," he said, "Them take me back." But yeah, that was the story on those shoes from Dan the Wolf, man.
Yeah, when I had kind of dug into it and found that they had trained together or something, and Tank just kind of borrowed them the shoes and just let them keep them,
Yeah, that's the story behind it. Yeah, I think I had some. Matter of fact, I had some Don Fry shoes too from the early USCs that one of the guys out there I sold them to. But and some of them, some Don Fry shoes.
One time I sent a certificate of authenticity out to Tank to sign on those shoes, and a lot of the times you send those things out and you never get them back. I mean, some of these guys won't even simply sign it, once they realize it's the right, piece that was theirs, and I have a stamped addressed self envelope with it, just throw it in their mailbox, but they don't do that. But Tank, he took the time to doing it. And then he even wrote some little joke in there, like, make sure they're a size 5 or something. Yeah, he said, make sure they're a size 5. Like, I mean, yeah, right. I'm sure he wears a size 5.
He's got a personality, and That's awesome that Tank did that because, like you said, a lot of guys wouldn't take the time of day to reply to you or even go to, or do anything like that. So that's awesome. I told you he's a good dude. Yeah,
he is. Yeah, he's one of very few that ever respond to anything like that. They all say they will, but a lot of times they don't.
Yeah, he got in a bar fight. He told me, and I think he was on probation from beating another dude up, and so he gets in a bar fight, and the bar owner calls him up and tells Tank to come in because Tank tore up the bar, and Tank got to pay for the bar stools and everything. And I guess the guy showed him the paper, the newspaper, and the thing was in here about getting into the fights. And I guess the guy knew somebody in the UFC, and that's actually how Tank got into it. The guy, the bar owner, led Tank in the right direction, and Tank called him up, and rest is just. And man, let me tell you, Tank would ever Tank would go into them fights straight off, the couch or whatever. Tank was still was beating people senseless. So a modern day Tank would have been dangerous. But
I bought a collection here about a year and a half ago, and it contained about, I don't know, a few hundred pictures, and then there was like 500 or 600 pictures that all in negatives, and a lot of the pictures were from some parties and stuff with Tank there. He had gotten in a fight with the Brazilians, him and Coleman, and there's a bunch of them. Then remember when he kind of got into it with Elaine McCarthy, Big John's wife, Well, some of the pictures in there of him dancing with her, he's wearing this big hat, big straw hat or something. I don't know. There's just some really interesting pictures in there. I've never released them because they've probably never been seen,
Yeah, I got a couple negatives that's never been released either, a couple strips. So I made a couple of them and posted like 8x10s, and I had the Tank sign, and I sold them, but I know what you mean about the negatives. They're nice to have, and they're nice to have. This something you got that ain't nobody ever seen. So,
I just sent them out. I've never received them back yet. I sent them to this company that's going to just put them all on little digital plug or whatever, So I'm kind of curious to see them when they come in, and there's a ton of them from UFC 2 as well. So,
yeah, those would be nice to have.
Yeah, I actually got them from Brett out there from and then I bought the MMA Collector website from him as well.
Oh, yeah, man. Back then, Brett was the man. Back then, him and Jeremy from out west. But Brett was, Brett was one of the first guys that I started getting a lot of stuff from too. He really had the inside track. Brett did.
He did. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we got our own inside track. But Brett was a pretty good guy. Charlie's one as well. I know you know Charlie. I've seen that.
Yep. We know Charlie well.
Yeah, Charlie's got a nice little collection, man.
For sure.
Yep. No, I'm here. I'm enjoying the banter just because I'm a collector at heart. I love this stuff, and just the references and everything we're talking about just brings me back to. So I've enjoyed the conversation. Everything Brian goes through, here, and I'm meeting him for the first time, but you can just tell this man is like an MMA lifer. You know what I mean? It's just, it's the kind of thing where, back then when he's, doing the backyard fight, he's just already thinking about putting things away and the memorabilia aspect of it. And those are, Jeremy Kubal that you also mentioned, Brett. These are guys that were ahead of the curve. Everybody, Brian included, and sometimes, you might say, it was small time, but, hopefully compared to the future, it is, but at the same time, hey, it wasn't small time for the time period. You know what I mean? It's like, it was the foundations of something. So I appreciate the podcast in terms of history, because here we're under the hood for the memorabilia stuff, We're really at the source of the first guys.
Yeah, exactly, man. We just got to keep it going. That's all we can do. And hopefully this new wave of the guys keep it going as well. And hopefully one day, I truthfully hope one day we see a museum. That's what I would love to see, is a museum. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know why the UFC hasn't bought everybody's stuff and made a museum yet. I don't understand that for the life of me, but I guess that's why they're rich and I'm not.
My guess is they're making so much money just promoting fights at this time that they
Yeah,
just
but
don't.
it's big like the NFL Hall of Fame, the Basketball Hall of Fame, the Baseball Hall of Fame. I mean, if you want to put yourself on their level, guess what? You need a Hall of Fame, and not
Yeah,
just members. You need all the artifacts like all the other Hall of Fames do. And I'm sure one day you go,
exactly.
and that's when that stuff's
Yeah,
gonna be worth a fortune, man. So
yeah.
you hold on to that SEG stuff you got because one day they're gonna come knocking because it ain't, they're one of one. They're not duplicated. They're one of one for each event, man. So the people who has that old stuff, they're gonna get a lot of money in the future out of it. Way
I
more than
hope so, but I
for
just
sure.
would like to be involved in some way too.
Well,
I
that's how
mean, I'm
they
fine either way.
put your little name by it, and you promote. They get you involved. They'll work with you. You got an awful lot of stuff, man. So you got a lot of stuff ain't nobody ever gonna have. I think that's probably the only Fedor jumpsuit I've ever even seen. Fedor stuff is extremely hard to get,
It
So
is.
I don't know how much fight worn stuff he has out there, especially from the Pride era. That's about all I know of. But
Yeah.
Brett might know a little bit more, Jeremy. But
I got a pair of his gloves from Pride from Jeremy, those Zulu gloves. I don't know if you remember him having those, but I got them
yeah, yeah,
from
I did.
him.
Jeremy got a man. He's always had a good little inside track, too. He's out there in that West Coast out there, so he get to see some of those guys a little bit more. But Fedor was always elusive over here in the States. But,
Yeah.
but
Well, Miguel's had some experiences a little bit with Fedor. Why don't you tell Brian a little bit about that?
Well, to be honest with you, I think that the tracksuit's an amazing find, specifically because of Fedor, being Russian. He has his handlers over there. Vadim, his manager, longtime manager. He's the kind of guy who would be like, no, 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 give me the gloves, And they got collectors over there, and like Khabib stuff too is probably a dark hole that you're never going to get that stuff from a rich Russian person. You know what I mean? So you are
yeah,
competing there at a whole different level in terms of collecting because they want it just for the fact that it's a Russian, So it's like their ethnicity, their pride in their country. You're facing all of that when you're looking to get Fedor stuff. So just having achieved it, my hat's off to you.
yeah.
I have a contract. I have a contract somewhere with my signature and Fedor's signature and Matt Lindland's signature because I was the matchmaker for that fight.
Oh
So
wow.
so that's my Fedor, story. I got to work with him. I was actually the first American matchmaker to match him. So everything you said about elusiveness, yeah, there's no doubt that it has to do also because now you're talking about like the Oscar winners or whatever of our sport. You know what I mean? He's the elite of the elite.
Yeah, debatable the GOAT. And I'll tell you, it is debatable if he was the GOAT. I'm kind of hard
I
pressed to
think
say he
so.
was. I think so as well because Pride was ruthless and Fedor was undersized and he didn't just like try to run from you. Like Fedor went straight to you and would box your ears off. And he did it against all the greats. And at that point in time, the Pride had all the big stars. So
Yeah. No, he fought Nogueira, Crow Cop. He
yeah,
beat him all. To me,
he
to me,
beat
the
him
match,
all.
to me, the Fedor match that you want that just is out of its mind is against the giant Korean guy because
Oh
there's
yeah.
simply that guy had put in enough MMA training dedicated to this with backers and a lot of juice behind them, and you just can't prepare for somebody who's almost double your size and. Fedor's demeanor and everything in that fight is just insane.
He's
Insane.
stone cold. Fedor was stone cold and
Yeah.
hit like a truck. I actually was at the fight in Chicago when he lost to Dan Henderson, and I think that kind of changed him. It probably changed his mentality from being invincible to being beatable. And
Yeah.
I thought he was winning the fight, and then Dan slipped out from underneath of him and threw that uppercut underneath his arm and KO'd him. But
Yep.
it was
Amazing. Amazing. So
The
I'll tell you
close,
a little Fedor tidbit just for the fans out there. Back around 2005, he was a guest at a show of Russia versus USA we held in New Jersey. and he did a seminar in New Jersey. People paid $100 and they got to, do a full 3-hour seminar with Fedor. And it's very funny because, that's an opportunity now that people would jump all over. But back then, it went unnoticed. Fedor didn't take any money from the promotion. He gave us the seminar as a help. And they hired a UN level translator to do it. The guy's listening to Fedor here and he's translating in English. Amazing. It was a fantastic seminar, and Fedor gave a lot. Great guy. And traditional seminar, everybody ran laps at the beginning and he started with the basics, and everybody got to get a hold and feel for him. And that's a one-time thing that nobody, I wonder how many people saw pictures of that day from back then and stuff, because that's a one-time thing that very few people even know about.
Yeah, I've never heard about it. And I'll tell you, he could make some good money if he did a seminar this day and age. People would probably pay $1,000 for a 3-hour seminar or more, some people. So, yeah, he can make some good money with that. But back then, people didn't. It just. I remember, when I first started going to the UFCs, the fighters would be out there in the crowd with you before they went up to the weigh-ins and things like that. I sat right next to Tim Sylvia and all them guys, Frank Trigg, George St. Pierre. I think it was his first or second fight in the UFC, and nobody even walked up to him wanting an autograph. And I walked up to him, and he went by Rush back then, and he signed a shirt for me, and it says GSP Rush or whatever. And but nobody else was even going up to him to get an autograph. Nowadays.
Yeah. And you
I
go back
remember even
than that. Go ahead, Ed.
I was going to say, I remember even 10 years ago, you could go to a UFC, and if you just find out where the fighters are going to be staying, you go into the bar in the motel, they're all really approach them, shoot the shit with them. I remember meeting Donald Cerrone, Paul Felder, even 7 or 8 years ago in Chicago for an event there. There was a couple other fighters. I just can't recall. I remember we even saw Herb Dean in there, in the bar, so it was at the, and you could approach them, but nowadays, you don't see that. I was in Vegas last year for on Nick Diaz's last fight, and we stayed at the MGM right across the street from T-Mobile Arena there. And I remember I was sitting at the bar there. Next thing you know, Nate Diaz came walking in. Well, there was a crowd of people, of probably 100 people, just following him wherever he went. It's like you can't really just sit down and have a beer anymore if you're a celebrity quite like that.
Right. Yeah. When I was going, I'd be out and I'd be at the bars, and I had drinks with Chuck Liddell, Babalu, about anybody you can think of. But like you said, back then they could just walk through the club and not be bothered like that. But now they can't even go to the club because of being bombarded. But which is understandable, if you want to be a rock star, you got to pay the rock star price. So
that's true. Yeah.
You need all those people. You need all those people and those new fans for the museum, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The new fans.
And I think that might be a good spot to wrap up. We're coming up on about an hour here. And, the original topic of Tank and Scott, we're off on a couple of different things. And it's all been really cool. So what do you think, Ed? Ryan Grooms should come back and chat with us just about the good old days at some point.
Anytime. It was nice to talk to you once again. It's been a while.
Yeah, man. Good to see you guys doing good things, man. I appreciate you.